After I was injured, my parents said they couldn't afford to help me, then bought my brother a house. Can you imagine being left to drown by your own family, only for them to turn around years later, completely desperate, expecting you to rescue them? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the devastating price of unchecked favoritism, and the moment I finally learned to stop being their personal punching bag. My name's Jake. I'm 32, and I've been on my own since I was 18. Not because I was some wild kid craving independence, but because my parents made it crystal clear early on. I was the child who needed to figure things out. My younger brother, Nathan, he got the full, deluxe, cushioned family support package. Growing up, the favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a blaring siren, so obvious it would have been hilarious if it wasn't. You know, my actual life. Nathan could practically walk on water. Forgot his homework? Mom would drop everything to drive it to school. Failed a test? Dad would march into the school, demanding an explanation for why his precious son wasn't getting proper instruction. Got caught drinking at 16? Oh, boys will be boys. Everyone experiments. Me? I got a C on one single assignment in sophomore year. 1 C. I was grounded for a month. No phone, no friends, just homework and chores. When I dared to point out the blatant double standard, Dad hit me with that classic line that still makes my blood absolutely boil. Nathan needs more support because he's sensitive. You're tough enough to handle it. Translation? We don't feel like parenting you, so we'll just call it character building. I worked through high school because I knew college wasn't going to pay for itself. My dad, he managed a mid-sized warehouse, made decent money. Mom worked part-time at an insurance office. They weren't rolling in cash, but they certainly weren't struggling. They could have helped me with school. They chose not to. You'll appreciate your education more if you earn it yourself, Mom said, when I tentatively asked about tuition help. Meanwhile, Nathan's college fund just sat there, untouched, accumulating interest, waiting for him to decide what he wanted to be. Spoiler alert, he never did figure it out. So, I did what I always did. I figured it out. Community college for 2 years, then transferred to state school. I lived in the cheapest apartment I could find, crammed in with 3 other roommates. I worked full-time during summers and breaks, part-time during school. Graduated with a logistics management degree and about $28,000 in student loans. Straight out of college, I landed an entry-level position at a shipping company. It wasn't glamorous, moving boxes, learning inventory systems, but I was good at it. Over 6 years, I worked my way up to a supervisor position, making around $52,000 a year. Enough to cover my loans, rent a decent 1-bedroom, and actually save a little each month. Nathan? He dropped out of college after a year and a half. Just stopped going. When my parents found out, they weren't even mad. Just disappointed in that soft, gentle way that came with zero consequences. He moved back home, rent-free, and spent the next 2 years bouncing between part-time gigs at coffee shops and retail stores. Every family dinner turned into this bizarre therapy session where my parents would gush about Nathan finding his path and discovering his passion, like he was on some spiritual quest, instead of just, being lazy and directionless. When I'd mention my promotions or pay raises, I'd get a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation immediately pivoted back to Nathan's latest existential crisis about whether he should try art school, real estate, or maybe even coding. Then, last October, it happened. The accident. We were doing inventory in one of the main warehouses, and I was up on a scissor lift, checking stock on the high shelves. Safety protocol says you're supposed to have a spotter, and the lift needs to be on a level surface. But we were behind schedule, and my manager was pushing everyone to move faster. I reached for a clipboard that had fallen behind some boxes, and the whole lift shifted. The ground wasn't as level as I thought, and the weight distribution was off. The thing tipped sideways. I went down about 12 feet. I landed hard on my left side. The pain? Oh, it was a living nightmare. Every breath felt like I was being stabbed. I couldn't move my arm. I just lay there on the cold concrete floor, trying not to pass out, while my coworkers scrambled to call for help. Broken collarbone, 3 fractured ribs, and something nasty to my shoulder that needed surgery. Hospital. Surgery. Physical therapy. The whole damn thing. The doctor told me I'd be out of work for at least 4 months, maybe 6. Workers' comp would cover the medical bills, but only a percentage of my salary. And my company had this policy. If you were out on medical leave for more than 90 days, they could terminate your position. I did the math right there, my head still fuzzy from pain meds. I was looking at losing about $2,500 a month in income, potentially for half a year. Plus, I need help with basic stuff. I literally couldn't lift my arm above my waist or carry anything heavier than a coffee cup. I called my parents from the hospital the day after surgery. I explained the situation, told them I was going to be in rough financial shape and might need to borrow some money for rent and bills. Maybe even crash with them for a month or two, since I couldn't really take care of myself. My dad's response: "Jake, we'd love to help, but money's really tight right now. Your mother's hours got cut, and we've got our own bills to worry about. You're going to have to figure something out." Then Mom got on the phone, basically echoing the same thing. Added some nauseating nonsense about how independent and capable I always was, and surely I could work something out. Maybe ask my friends for help, look into government assistance programs. I was in a hospital bed, high on pain medication, could barely move, and my own parents were telling me to figure it out on my own. The betrayal hit me harder than any of their previous favoritism. This wasn't about getting less attention or fewer privileges. This was about actually needing help and being told, flat out, no. But my buddy Carlos? He came through. He and his wife, Amy, had just bought a house with an extra bedroom. They offered to let me stay with them while I recovered. Wouldn't even let me pay rent. Just said to help with groceries when I could. Family is supposed to help family, Carlos told me when I tried to thank him for the 100th time. And sometimes your real family ain't the people you're related to. Moving in with them was humbling in ways I didn't expect. I'd always been the fiercely independent guy who handled his own problems. Now I needed help with everything. Carlos had to carry my bags up the stairs because I couldn't lift anything. Amy set up the bedroom, putting everything on my right side since my left arm was useless. That first night there, I just sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not from physical pain, though that was brutal. I cried from the crushing realization that strangers were treating me with more kindness and compassion than my own parents. Carlos knocked, came in without a word, and just sat there with me until I pulled myself together. Those first few months were brutal. Physical therapy hurt worse than the original injury. Some nights I'd wake up screaming because I'd rolled onto my bad shoulder. I couldn't dress myself for weeks. Amy, Carlos's wife, had to help me with basic stuff like putting on shirts and cutting up my food. The physical therapy sessions were their own special kind of hell. 3 times a week, I'd go to this clinic where a therapist named Sandra would put me through exercises that felt like torture. Shoulder rotations, resistance bands, weight training with 2-pound dumbbells that felt like concrete blocks. "Pain is your body healing," Sandra would say, while I gritted my teeth through another rep. "You're rebuilding strength that the injury took away." Yeah, real inspirational stuff when you're sweating through your shirt, trying to lift your arm above your head. The mental aspect was sometimes worse than the physical. I'd been a supervisor, had people reporting to me, was on track for a management position. Now I was dependent on friends to help me shower and couldn't even open a jar of peanut butter on my own. Carlos never made me feel like a burden, though. He'd joke about how I was finally learning what it was like to be humble. Amy would laugh and tell him to shut up, then ask if I needed help with anything. Their kids, 2 boys aged 6 and 8, thought I was like a fun uncle who lived with them. They'd draw me pictures and leave them on my nightstand. One night, about 6 weeks in, I was having a particularly bad evening. The pain was worse than usual, and I'd just gotten another email from my company saying they still weren't sure when I could come back. I was sitting in their living room, just staring at nothing, when Amy sat down next to me. "You doing okay?" she asked gently. "Not really," I admitted. "Feel like everything's falling apart, and I can't do anything to stop it." She nodded. "When Carlos got laid off from his job 3 years ago, before we had the boys, we almost lost everything. Credit cards maxed out, behind on rent, eating ramen for weeks straight. It was the darkest period of our life." I hadn't known that. Carlos had never mentioned it. "What got you through it?" I asked. "Each other," she said simply, "and accepting help when it was offered." Carlos had this thing where he felt like asking for help was admitting failure. Took him months to finally accept that sometimes you need people. That needing help doesn't make you weak. "I hate needing help," I confessed. "I know," she said, giving my arm a squeeze. "But the people who care about you don't see it as a burden. They see it as a chance to show up for someone they care about. Let us help you, Jake. That's what family does." That conversation stuck with me. I started trying to be better about accepting their help instead of fighting it all the time. The financial hit was worse than I expected. Even with workers' comp covering some, I burned through my entire savings trying to keep up with rent on my apartment, my car payment, insurance, student loans, all of it. By month 3, I was basically broke. I had to sell my car just to cover bills. Started missing loan payments. My credit score tanked. And through all of this, my parents never called to check on me. Not once. I'd text updates sometimes and get back these short, almost dismissive responses like, "Glad you're healing," or "Hang in there." Nothing substantial. No offers to visit. No asking if I needed anything. Meanwhile, I'm seeing Nathan post on social media about family dinners at my parents' house, weekend trips to the lake, all the normal family stuff, just without me. Month 4, I finally got medical clearance to return to work. Except my original position had been filled, and the company offered me a lower-level job at $38,000. Take it or leave it. I took it because I desperately needed income, but it stung. 6 years of working my way up, gone because I got hurt doing my job. My caseworker said I could probably sue for wrongful termination, but lawyers cost money I didn't have. So, I swallowed it and went back to basically where I started. I started rebuilding, slowly. Moved into a cheaper apartment. Picked up a used car. Created a strict budget, determined to claw my way out of this hole. Carlos and Amy helped me move. Helped me get set up. They still wouldn't let me pay them back for the months I stayed with them. This whole time, I'm getting random texts from my mom asking about Christmas plans or my birthday. Surface-level stuff. Never acknowledging that she'd left me to drown when I actually needed help. And I played along, because what else was I going to do? They were still my parents. Then came Thanksgiving. Mom texted, asking if I was coming to dinner. I said yeah. The alternative was eating alone, and I figured I could handle one awkward family meal. Carlos offered to let me spend Thanksgiving with his family instead. "You don't owe them your presents, man," he said. "Especially not after how they treated you." But I wanted to see them. Needed to see them, actually. Part of me was still hoping for some kind of acknowledgement, some kind of apology. That they'd see how I'd struggled and maybe feel bad about leaving me hanging. Stupid hope, but hope nonetheless. I showed up at their house, and immediately, something was different. New furniture in the living room. A big sectional couch that definitely cost a few grand. New TV mounted on the wall, at least 65 inches. The kitchen had been renovated at some point. New granite countertops, fancy backsplash, stainless steel appliances. The place looked good. Really, really good. Like they'd spent serious money recently. Walking through that door and seeing all the upgrades was like getting punched in the gut. While I'd been selling my car to make rent, they'd been remodeling their kitchen. Nathan was there, looking pleased with himself, wearing some designer hoodie I knew cost at least $200. He gave me this weird, half-hearted bro hug that I barely returned. Mom fussed over the turkey like she was on some cooking show. Dad sat in his new recliner, watching football. He barely acknowledged me when I came in. Dinner was tense from the start. Nobody mentioned my injury or asked how I was doing. The conversation stayed surface level. Weather. Local news. What movie Nathan saw last weekend. I sat there, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate, watching my family act like the past year hadn't happened. Then, about halfway through dinner, Nathan couldn't contain his excitement anymore. He started talking about this apartment he was looking at. Turns out, my parents had been helping him search for a place to buy. An actual house. They were talking about down payments and mortgage rates and interest locks. And I'm sitting there, doing mental math that just wasn't adding up. "The real estate market is crazy right now," Dad was saying, "but we found this great opportunity in Riverside. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nice little yard, perfect starter home." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "And the neighborhood is up and coming. Great investment." Nathan was practically bouncing in his seat. "I've never lived anywhere that was actually mine, you know? It's going to be so cool. I found this great 3-bedroom place in Riverside that's only $285,000. With their help, I can actually afford it. The mortgage payment is going to be like $1,800 a month, but I can swing that with my job." I felt something cold settling in my stomach. "Wait," I interrupted. "You guys are helping Nathan buy a house?" The table went quiet. Dead quiet. Dad looked at me like I'd asked the stupidest question on earth. "Well, yeah," he said, like it was obvious. "He can't live with us forever. It's time he got his own place." I pushed. "How much are you helping him with?" My parents exchanged that look. The kind of look that said they hadn't planned on having this conversation in front of me. Mom did that thing where she tries to make something sound smaller than it is. Spoke in that overly casual tone that meant she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. We're just giving him a little help with the down payment. Nothing major. How much? I pressed. Nathan, bless his complete lack of self-awareness, jumped in, excited. Couldn't read the room to save his life. They're giving me $50,000 for the down payment. Isn't that awesome? The room went dead silent again. I must have had a look on my face, because even Nathan shut up. Mom was suddenly very interested in her green beans. Dad cleared his throat and reached for his water glass. $50,000. These people who couldn't afford to help me with rent while I recovered from a serious injury had somehow scraped together 50 grand to buy my brother a house. That's great, I said, my voice flat hollow. Real generous of you guys. Dad picked up on my tone. Don't start, Jake. This is different. How, exactly, is it different? I asked, my voice rising a little. Nathan needs this, he insisted. He's been struggling to find his direction, and having his own place will give him stability and motivation. I laughed. A short, bitter burst. I couldn't help it. The absurdity was too much. I needed help 8 months ago, when I literally couldn't work, and you told me money was tight. But Nathan needs a house, so suddenly you've got 50 grand lying around. Mom jumped in, that irritating peacekeeping voice. Jake, we've been saving that money for years. It's not the same as having extra money for emergencies. Saving it for what? I asked, looking directly at them. For him specifically? The silence was my answer. Right? I said, nodding slowly. So you've had this money the whole time. You just decided helping me wasn't a priority. Nathan tried to defend them. Dude, it's not like that. They were going to help you. But what? I snapped. I never asked. You never needed it? You always figure stuff out. There it was again. That same damn line I'd heard my whole life. I was too capable, too independent, too good at handling my own problems to deserve actual support. I needed it, I said, quietly, but with an edge of steel. I asked for help, and you said no. I slept on a friend's couch for 3 months because I couldn't afford rent. I sold my car. I maxed out my credit cards and destroyed my credit score. I needed help, and you left me to figure it out, while saving money to buy him a house. Dad's face was getting red. We made a decision about how to use our money. You're an adult. You don't get to dictate what we do with our finances. You're absolutely right. I agreed, standing up. My chair scraped loudly on the floor. It's your money. Spend it however you want. But don't expect me to pretend this is okay. And don't expect me to keep showing up to family dinners like nothing happened. I turned and walked out. Didn't even grab my coat. Just walked straight out the door and sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, trying to calm down before I drove home. That was 8 months ago. I haven't spoken to them since, except for a few text exchanges that went nowhere. They tried the guilt trip route first. Mom sent these long, rambling messages about how families should stick together, how hurt they were that I was being distant. Full paragraphs about how they'd always loved me and didn't understand why I was pulling away. Playing the victim, like she was the injured party here. Dad sent shorter messages, basically telling me to grow up and stop being dramatic. You're too old to throw tantrums over family decisions. One text read, we did what we thought was best for Nathan. You need to move on. Move on. Right. Like they just accidentally forgotten to call me back and not deliberately left me to struggle through a medical crisis. Nathan sent me one text. Just 2 words, sorry bro. And nothing else. Didn't even have the guts to call. Probably typed it while sitting on the couch my parents bought him for his new house. I focused on rebuilding my life without them. Worked overtime whenever I could. My supervisor was actually cool about letting me take extra shifts since I'd proven myself reliable. I started picking up Saturday shifts at time and a half, sometimes pulling 55 to 60-hour weeks. The grind was brutal, but it was necessary. Every paycheck, I'd split between paying down debt and building my emergency fund back up. I made a detailed spreadsheet, tracking every dollar, every debt, every goal. Carlos called it my revenge budget. Getting my life together was the best middle finger I could give my parents. I even got a second part-time gig doing inventory consulting for smaller companies on weekends. One of my former coworkers had started a consulting business and needed someone who knew inventory systems. 3 hours on Sunday mornings, counting stock and organizing warehouses for local businesses. An extra $400 a month that went straight to debt. It was exhausting. Working Monday through Friday at my regular job, Saturday overtime shifts, Sunday morning consulting gigs. My social life was non-existent. I dated a woman for about 2 months before she got tired of me always being busy. Couldn't even blame her. Who wants to date someone who works 7 days a week? But the numbers were moving in the right direction. Credit card balances dropping, emergency fund growing, credit score ticking up point by point. I started hitting milestones that felt huge. Paying off one credit card completely. Getting my credit score over 650. Saving up $1,000 emergency fund. Carlos became like the brother I should have had. Real family, chosen family. He helped me create a financial recovery plan. Introduced me to his financial advisor friend who gave me free advice, kept me sane through the worst of it. His family included me in everything. Birthdays, holidays, random barbecues. They never made me feel like charity or a burden. This is what family does, Amy told me once, when I tried to thank her for probably the 100th time. We show up for each other. Not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. That's what makes it real. Their kids started calling me Uncle Jake. They'd make me birthday cards and Christmas cards with crayon drawings. The younger one, Danny, asked me once why I didn't spend holidays with my other family. Because they're not really my family, I told him. You guys are. What makes us your family if we're not related? He asked. Carlos overheard and jumped in. Family isn't about being related, buddy. It's about who shows up when you need them. The kid thought about that for a second, then shrugged and went back to his coloring. But the word stuck with me. My credit score started recovering faster than I expected. All those on-time payments adding up. I paid off my credit cards completely by month 6. The feeling of zeroing out that last balance was better than Christmas. I actually cried a little looking at the payment confirmation. Then, I got promoted back to a supervisor position at work with a pay bump to $48,000. Not where I was before the injury, but climbing back. My boss pulled me aside after announcing the promotion and said he'd watched how I'd handled adversity, and it showed character. That I was the kind of person he wanted in leadership. That meant more to me than he probably knew. Being recognized for working hard and pushing through difficulty instead of just being given handouts because someone felt sorry for me. I found a better apartment in a decent neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, because I wanted actual space. Had a balcony where I could sit in the evenings and just breathe. No roommates, no favors, just my own place that I paid for with my own money. I signed that lease feeling proud in a way I hadn't felt in years. Then I bought a reliable used car. Nothing fancy, just a Honda Civic with 80,000 miles that ran great. Paid cash for it, using money I'd saved from all those extra shifts. The dealer looked surprised when I pulled out the envelope of bills. It felt good to make a major purchase without financing anything. Things were looking up. I was climbing out of the hole my injury and my family's abandonment had dug for me. And I was doing it completely on my own terms, with help from people who actually gave a damn about me. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I don't answer those, but something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity, maybe just bad timing. It was Nathan. He sounded stressed. His voice had that edge to it that meant he was trying to stay calm, but failing miserably. He started with some awkward small talk, asking how I was doing, like we just talked yesterday, instead of not speaking for months. Asked about my job, my apartment, if I was seeing anyone. All surface-level stuff that we both knew wasn't why he called. Listen, he finally said, after about 2 minutes of dancing around it. I know things have been weird between us and the parents. I should have reached out sooner. It was awkward, you know, after Thanksgiving and everything. Is there a point to this call, Nathan? I asked, cutting him off. Yeah, right. So, I'm in a bit of a situation, and I was hoping you could help me out. I almost hung up right there, but curiosity got the better of me. I had to hear what kind of situation required calling the brother he'd ghosted for months. What kind of situation? I asked, my voice completely neutral. The house they helped me buy? I'm having trouble making the mortgage payments. I thought my job was solid, but they cut my hours back in January, and I'm barely covering bills. The utilities alone are killing me. 3 bedrooms means heating and cooling costs are crazy, plus the HOA fees that I didn't really budget for properly. And the property taxes were higher than I expected. He was spiraling now, words coming faster like he'd been holding this in for a while. I'm like 3 months behind on the mortgage, and the bank is sending warning letters. Got one that says they're starting foreclosure proceedings if I don't catch up by next month. I've tried everything, man. Picked up extra shifts when they're available. Cut back on eating out. Even sold some stuff. But it's not enough. Sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely. A part of me almost enjoying this. What's this got to do with me? A long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end. I was hoping you could loan me some money. Just to get caught up. Maybe like $5,000. I'll pay you back. I swear. As soon as I get my hours back to normal, I'll send you monthly payments. We can draw up a contract or whatever you want. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of this kid. My brother, who'd watched my parents hand him $50,000 while I struggled through an injury. Who'd sent one 2-word text in 8 months. Who'd never once asked how I was doing or if I needed anything. This guy was calling me for a loan. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Mom and Dad gave you $50,000 for a house you can't afford. You're 3 months behind on your mortgage. And you're calling me, the brother you haven't spoken to in almost a year, to ask for $5,000? I'm desperate, man. I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything, he pleaded. Have you asked Mom and Dad for help? I asked. Another long pause. This one said everything. They can't help, he finally admitted, his voice small. They've got their own money problems right now. That got my attention. I sat up straighter in my chair. What kind of money problems? I don't know all the details. Dad doesn't talk about it much, but something about his job not working out and some investments that went bad. They lost a chunk of money somewhere. They're selling the house. Wait, hold up. My parents were selling their house. The house they'd lived in for 20 years? The house they just renovated with new furniture and appliances? They're selling the house. I repeated, incredulous. Yeah, they're downsizing to an apartment or something. Moving into a 2-bedroom place across town. It's a whole thing. Mom's really upset about it, but Dad says they don't have a choice. Something about needing to access the equity to cover debts. The pieces were starting to click into place in my head. They'd spent their savings buying Nathan a house. Something went wrong with Dad's job. Now they were broke and selling their house to stay afloat. And Nathan was about to lose his house because they couldn't bail him out anymore. But anyway, about that loan. He started again. I cut him off. Nathan, I'm not giving you $5,000. I'm not giving you $5. You're on your own. Jake, please. I'm going to lose the house. Then you lose the house, I said, my voice chillingly calm. Should have thought about that before buying something you couldn't afford. You're really going to let me become homeless over this? Over some grudge about stuff that happened last year. The lack of self-awareness was truly stunning. This isn't about a grudge, Nathan. This is about consequences. You made choices, bad ones. That's not my problem to fix. What happened to family helping family, he whined. I laughed again. The same hollow, bitter laugh from that Thanksgiving dinner. You mean like how our parents helped me when I was injured and broke? Oh wait, they didn't. Or like how you and them stayed in touch and checked on me during the worst time of my life. Oh wait, that didn't happen either. That kind of family help. I said I was sorry, he yelled. You sent a text that said, sorry, bro, that's not an apology. That's a cop-out. And now you want money. Nah, figure it out yourself. You're capable and independent, right? I hung up before he could respond. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Mom, this time. Jake, we need to talk. About what? I asked, already knowing. About your brother. He told us you refused to help him with his mortgage situation. That's right, I said flatly. I did refuse. How can you be so cold? He's your brother. He's going to lose everything. Everything you gave him, you mean? The house he couldn't afford that you enabled him to buy? That everything. She made this frustrated, sputtering sound. This isn't about the past. This is about him needing help right now. Funny, I retorted. How it's only about the present when you need something from me. When I needed help, it was also about the present, and you couldn't be bothered. That's not fair, Jake. Our financial situation was different then. Was it though? I challenged. Because you had $50,000 saved up. You just chose not to use any of it to help me. Dad grabbed the phone. I could hear the exchange in the background. His voice came through, tight and controlled. Jake, your mother and I made decisions we thought were best at the time. We're not going to apologize for helping your brother get started in life. I'm not asking for an apology, I said. You called me, remember? We're calling because we need you to be reasonable. Nathan needs $5,000 or he's going to lose his house. You're in a position to help him, and you're choosing not to, out of spite. I'm choosing not to because it's not my responsibility. He's an adult. You guys are adults. I'm not a bank. And even if I was, I wouldn't loan money to people who've proven they can't manage it. This is what's wrong with your generation, he spat. No sense of family obligation. That one made me laugh. My generation. This from the man who watched me struggle and did nothing. Dad, I've got family obligations, I said, a slow, deliberate cadence in my voice. To myself. To the people who actually showed up for me when I needed them. That doesn't include you guys anymore. Mom took the phone back. Her voice was different now. Smaller. Worn. Jake, we're in trouble. Real trouble. Your father lost his job 6 months ago. We've been burning through our savings. That's why we're selling the house. We were hoping to help Nathan keep his place and move in with him for a while until we get back on our feet. The whole terrifying picture clicked into place. They'd spent their savings helping Nathan buy a house he couldn't afford. Dad lost his job. Now they were broke and planning to move in with Nathan. Except Nathan was about to lose the house. So, their entire backup plan was falling apart, and they needed me to bail them out. That sounds really difficult, I said genuinely. I'm sorry you're going through that. So, you'll help? She asked, a sliver of desperate hope in her voice. Absolutely not, I stated. Silence. You're going to let your parents end up homeless the same way you let me struggle through an injury that cost me my job and my savings? She choked out. Yeah, I said. I am. Figure it out. You're resourceful people. You'll find a way. Jake, please. I'm done with this conversation. Don't call me again asking for money. Don't call me at all unless you're ready to actually acknowledge what you did and why it was wrong. Until then, we've got nothing to talk about. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Blocked Nathan, too. Then I sat down and had a drink because my hands were shaking. Carlos called that night, like he somehow knew I needed to talk. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. And when I finished, he said, "Good for you, man. They made their choices. They don't get to guilt you into fixing their mess after they left you hanging." A part of me felt terrible, though. They are my parents. Being someone's parent doesn't give you a free pass to treat them like garbage and then demand help when you need it, he said, his voice firm. You offered them a chance to be family when you needed them. They said no. Now they get to live with that decision. He was right. I knew he was right, but it still felt weird, like I was doing something wrong by protecting myself. Over the next few days, I got texts from relatives I barely knew, aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very concerned about family unity and forgiveness. Clearly, my parents had been working the phone tree, trying to drum up pressure, playing the victim card with anyone who'd listen. My mom's cousin Linda texted, "I heard about the situation with your parents. They're really struggling and need family support right now. Blood is thicker than water, Jake." I replied. The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb," meaning chosen relationships are stronger than family bonds. Funny how people always forget that part. My Uncle Gary called directly. Didn't even bother with hello. "Jake, your mother called me in tears. She says you're refusing to help them when they're about to lose everything. That's not how we raised you kids to behave." "With all due respect, Uncle Gary," I said, keeping my voice even. "You didn't raise me at all. You see me maybe twice a year at family events. You have no idea how they raised me or what our relationship is actually like. But they're your parents. They gave you life," he sputtered. "They gave me life," I agreed, then told me to handle it on my own when I needed help. I'm just following their example. He made some frustrated noise and launched into a speech about family obligation and respect. Told me I was being immature and selfish, that I'd regret this decision when they were gone. All the classic guilt trip lines people use when they don't actually understand the situation but feel entitled to judge anyway. I let him finish his speech, then said, "Are you done? Because I've got to get ready for work. You know, that thing I do to support myself, since my parents taught me to be so independent." I didn't hear back from him after that, or from Linda, or from most of the other flying monkeys my parents sent my way. They'd deliver their guilt trip message. I'd push back, and they'd disappear back to their own lives. It's easy to judge from the outside when you're not the one who lived through it. 3 weeks went by, radio silence from my parents and Nathan. Then I got an email from my mom's account with the subject line, "Please read this." The email was long. Like, really long. Started with the usual guilt trip stuff about family and love and obligation. Then it shifted to blaming me for being stubborn and holding grudges. Said some pretty nasty things about how I'd always been the difficult child who needed to be right about everything. But at the very end, there was this part that actually seemed honest for once. Your father and I are scared. We don't know what's going to happen to us. We made mistakes with how we treated you, and we're sorry if you felt unsupported during your injury, but we need help now, and you're the only one who can provide it. Please don't abandon us the way you think we abandoned you. The apology was buried under so much other nonsense that it barely counted, and it was still focused on them and their needs. But it was something. I sat on that email for 2 days before responding. I wrote and deleted probably 10 different replies before settling on what I actually sent. Mom and Dad, I understand you're scared and struggling. And I know what that feels like, because I lived through it not that long ago. The difference is I had to figure it out completely on my own while you had options, and chose not to use them to help me. You're right that I felt unsupported during my injury. I didn't just feel that way. I was unsupported. I asked for help, and you said no. You had money saved, but decided it was more important to buy Nathan a house than to help your other son keep his apartment during a medical crisis. Those were your choices, and you're entitled to make them. But I'm also entitled to make mine. And I choose not to involve myself in your financial situation. Not out of spite or revenge, but because I've learned that I can't count on you. And you've learned you can't count on me. That's the relationship we built together. I don't wish you harm. I hope you find a way through this, but I'm not going to be the solution to problems you created. You taught me to be independent and self-sufficient. Congratulations. The lesson stuck. Take care of yourselves. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're resourceful people. Jake, I sent it. And then I blocked their email, too. I was done. Completely done. That was 3 months ago. Through the family grapevine, I heard they ended up moving into a small apartment across town. Nathan lost his house and moved back in with them. All 3 of them in a 2-bedroom apartment, from what I understand. My aunt, who's actually a decent person, called me once to check in. She didn't pressure me to reconcile or help them out. Just wanted to make sure I was doing okay. Your parents are telling everyone you're a terrible son who abandoned them, she said gently. I wanted you to know that some of us know better. We've watched how they treated you over the years. Thanks, I said, a lump forming in my throat. That actually means a lot. For what it's worth, she added, I think you're doing the right thing. Sometimes you have to let people face the consequences of their choices, even when it's hard to watch. I appreciated that more than I could express. For so long, I felt like I was the bad guy. But she was right. My parents taught me a harsh lesson about self-reliance, and I learned it well. Now, they're living with the consequences of their own choices. And for the first time in my life, I feel truly free.